Salam my dudes, SaiyanSalamander here, and welcome to the latest episode in my Re-Finery series. If you haven't seen any of the previous episodes, then basically I just go over Fire Emblem units that have already received a refine who I think I could use a bit more of a buff, and refine their weapon yet again. So let's jump straight into things with the first character that I'll be talking about, which is the perfect shot, George. George is a colourless bow unit in Fae, and was the wielder of Parthia in the original Fire Emblem games. If you recognise the weapon, it's probably because Brave Claude has a way better version of the weapon called Wind Parthia, and even with his perfect aim, George cannot hope to compete with him at the moment. Currently the original Parthia weapon reduces damage from magic foes by 30% and increases his attack by 6 as long as he's in battle against a ranged unit. The damage reduction is pretty nice, but it's super limited, and I think we could do a lot better considering the weapon is one of the 3 regalia of Arcania. For my refine, I'm going to give George plus 3 speed and an accelerated special cooldown. Of course it's a bow, so it's still effective against flyers too. I kept the 30% damage reduction effect, but I've buffed its activation condition immensely. Instead of only working against magic foes, it now works on all units as long as George initiates combat, and it even works on both phases if the foe uses a bow, dagger, staff, or tome. His refine has the same activation condition as his base effect, but I've spiced up the effect by a lot. It's already a buff to the refine since George gets to use his weapon against all foes play at phase, while the effect still activates dual phase against ranged targets, but it now grants plus 6 to all of George's stats, not just his attack, and it even inflicts a guard status on the foe too. This refine really makes Parthia feel more like a true regalia weapon, and really makes George shine as a colourless archer. He definitely needs a lot of investment still with how mediocre his stats are, but this new weapon is definitely a great start, and can allow him to compete against other colourless archers now. Next up on the list is a character from Fire Emblem Echo Shadows of Valentia. And while he's a popular unit to plus 10 and invest in, unlike George, I haven't actually started a merge project on this character yet. And that character is the sharp soldier, Lucas. While Lucas has a little to be desired in his speed and resistant department, he's a great unit with a lot of physical bulk and some decent attack to boot. His old weapon was the Daybreak Lance, and for such a cool sounding name, it's really not that great considering all the power creep that has happened since. It's just an enhanced slaying weapon with a built-in sturdy stance skill. And I think with all the refines and preferred weapons that we've seen these days, IS could do a lot better than that for such a popular unit. Considering his low resistance, I decided to give him a bit of a weird niche by making him a really good dragon killer. The reason I did this is because Lucas has a quite stoic character, and the one time in Echoes that he shows a glimpse of passion and emotion is when battling a god to the death during the final battle. I'll still never forget his famous line when battling against Duma. Because of that one quote, I really wanted to make this weapon effective against dragons. It even makes dragon enemies deal damage based on Lucas's defense instead of his resistance, to make him an incredible dragon killer and tank too. I also got him to keep the accelerated special cooldown effect, and gave him a built-in defense resistance fortress 3 skill too, to bolster his defenses even further to make him an even more incredible tank than he already is. I kept his refine effect and just boosted it to the next level by making it a spectrum stance 3 skill. It boosts all of Lucas's stats by 5 on enemy phase, and inflicts a guard status on the foe too. I could have just gave a massive boost to his attack and defense, but I thought it was used in boosting his other stats too. With his base weapon and refine effect combined, Lucas effectively gains plus 11 resistance on enemy phase, which is really good. And while the extra 5 speed isn't likely to help him double any extra foes, it does help prevent a few other foes from doubling him, which is something that really helps tanks a lot. Overall, Lucas is still really good at being an incredible tank unit, but now he's also got that added niche of being able to stop dragon foes right in their tracks too. All his stats become really workable, especially on the enemy phase, and I'm sure there's bound to be a bunch of interesting enemy phase builders for him too. Oh boy, where to go with this one. The third character I'll be talking about is the Wind Mage Merrick. The OG Green Wind Mage has been power crept time and time again, and he wasn't even that good when he first came out. He has insane HP for a mage, but the rest of his stats are either workable but or just straight up terrible. I had to make his refine insane just for him to stand out against newer units like Mr. Facetti's Spaghetti and Asbel. I took inspiration of his refine effect, which grants plus 5 attack and speed to himself as long as he's within 2 spaces of a mage or staff ally, and buffed it up immensely, as well as themed his whole weapon behind being around fellow mages or staff wielders. For the base weapon, Merrick still keeps the effective against flyers and accelerated special cooldown effect, but now he has a slightly nerfed version of attack speed unity. It's not a skill that we have in the game currently, but it's definitely one we're going to get at some point in the future. This version of the skill is slightly nerfed, though it works when Merrick is within 2 spaces of a mage or staff ally, instead of any ally, but it's still really good. And it's not even that difficult of a condition to meet too. As for the Refine, Merrick essentially gets a Spectrum Joint Drive skill, bringing +5 to Merrick and all magic and staff allies within 2 spaces. I think gives Merrick and the units of these weapon types +1 special cooldown charge per their attack. It doesn't change Merrick's playstyle much, as his Refine only really worked within 2 spaces of a magic or staff ally, but it's made him a lot better of a unit in this niche. And while he's still probably overshadowed by the other green mages, Merrick works as a nice supportive alternate for these units. Also boosts his attack and speed by a bunch thanks to the unity effect in his base weapon, and the joint drive skills in his weapon, which really helps him double and also gives him a chance to kill some units, which was normally pretty hard for the studious Wind Mage. Next up is a unit that's been shown quite a lot of love recently. He's got a free ult last year, and even just received a Resplendent ult last month too. But even with all that love, the weapon IS gave him still has a lot to be desired, and that unit is the Lionheart Eldergun. Originally the weapon was just for a legendary slaying sword, and with his Refine he got Fury free too. And don't get me wrong, Fury is a great effect, but on its own it's really just lackluster. So let's talk about how I buffed up his Refine. For the base weapon, Eldergun still keeps the accelerated special cooldown skill, but he also neutralizes foes effective against cavalry bonuses too, which can help him deal a lot more with his counters. Also, if a unit isn't adjacent to an ally, then Eldergun gains +5 to all stats during combat, and if he deals damage to the foe using a special, who restores 50% of his maximum HP. As for the Refine, I kept the Fury effect since it's already good enough Refine as it is. I just buffed it up to Fury 4 and called it a day. After all, the main problem was Eldergun's base weapon, since it didn't really have any extra skills on it aside from the slaying effect. Volta recently got a Refine with his Cursed Lance, and that weapon is the whole reason I decided to give Eldergun some love in this video. As well as having Fury free and a faster special cooldown in his base weapon, Volta also decreases all the foe's stats by 5, and gives them a guard status as long as a penalty is active on them. But now instead of Volta overshadowing Eldergun, I think with this effect I'll have to refine Volta's weapon in the future too. Eldergun basically becomes a cavalry version of Brave Claude. He's arguably be better too, since he can run distant counter and 3-4 at the same time, unlike Claude. With Resplendent ult and Refine combined, it's basically like having a +10 max Dragonflower's Eldergun, since he gains +6 to all of his stats, which is really helpful for a Gen 1 unit like him. While he's hard to merge, being a Gen 1 5-star exclusive, he can increase them by an extra +6 points if you manage to merge him and give him Dragonflowers too, creating a total of a whopping +12 to all stats. This makes Eldergun a pretty good jack of all trades type of unit with how much extra stats he can have at once maxed out. And he's a massive pain in the ass to kill with how bulky he is, and with him constantly gaining HP every time he procs his special, which is probably very often thanks to his weapon. The final Refine I'll be talking about in this video is for the Honourable Ninja herself, Kagero. Her old Refine is actually not too bad to be honest. If Kagero's attack is higher than the foe's, she gets +4 attack and speed. And as for the Refine, if Kagero initiates combat, she can reduce damage from foe's first attack by 50%. Well, it's really good, but there was one thing I was kinda sad didn't transfer to her preferred weapon, since it was really unique. Kagero is the only unit to come with the Poison Dagger Plus, which is a dagger that's effective against infantry units. This is a really cool effect, so I decided to add it to a base weapon effect, as well as give it a +2 attack and speed too. For the final base effect, I just buffed up what she already has for her preferred weapon. Now she gains +5 attack and speed instead of +4. She also neutralizes effects that prevent the unit's follow-up attacks during combat. And to top things off, it now works whenever Kagero initiates combat or dual phase as long as Kagero has a higher attack than the foe. For the Refine, I was going to keep it the same originally, but I had a really good idea. It's already a very similar effect to speed damage reduction skill like Close Call or Repel, so I figured why not give her an attack based version of one of those skills. So now instead of reducing damage by 50% of a foe's first attack when she initiates combat, it instead works when Kagero has a higher attack than the foe, and reduces up to 40% of the foe's damage depending on the difference between the unit's stats. This nerfs it slightly since Kagero won't be blocking as much damage on the foe's first attack, but I think the trade-off is worth it since if the foes attack again, then Kagero can reduce the damage on both attacks, or even receive a bonus on both phases now too. Unlike Spurn or Close Call, there isn't an extra effect regarding movement or increasing the damage by 5, but considering how the skill isn't usually available on Dagger units like Kagero, I think it's a really good effect. I think you definitely want to invest a bit more in Kagero's attack though, since even though it's pretty good, there's still a lot of units out there that can outclass her in this department. So the more attack you can invest in her, the better her Refine works. I think of all the characters on this list, Kagero probably needed a refine the least, but hey, she's a Gen 1 unit. She could still use a little bit of a push in order to stand out amongst some other new infantry dagger units. So I really hope this weapon can do that well. Now that's all I've got to talk about for this video, so I really hope you enjoyed the latest edition of my Re-Finery series. If you did, please consider dropping a like, subscribing, and commenting on which heroes you'd like me to see refined next. I also do a bunch of streams on Twitch, and talk about Fae, anime, and other stuff on my Discord too. So if either of those platforms interest you, then please check out the links to both in the description below. Again, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of February on the channel as well. Until next time, my dudes, bye!